And the truth is, it's a stalemate. Work with the Iranian people. Get with the National Council of Resistance of Iran. The Iranian people in 1953 had a good form of government, but because Mossadegh was going to nationalize oil.
The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement. And I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
در مورد یک سری از موضوعات ما به تفاهم‌هایی رسیدیم واقعیت. اما در مورد دو سه موضوع مهم خب دیدگاه‌ها فاصله داشت.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. A lot of things have been happening on the news, including the taking of the Strait of Hormuz by the United States of America. Donald Trump has seen fit to do this, and rightly so. What I wanted to discuss were a few things. You know, there are items on the news that you have to be very wary of. I've said this before. There's a lot of rumors and a lot of gossips, and one of them surfaced about 2-3 days ago, where it was alleged that the United States has agreed to unfreeze some assets of Iranian money to the tune of I think it was either 120 billion or 200 billion. I can't remember the exact figures. That rumor was somewhat crushed, but again, it seems to have resurfaced under a news agency that I read called Tasmin News. I'm not exactly sure who Tasmin News is, but it's not really that relevant. It's probably just a rumor. There's a lot of misinformation flying around on mainstream media. Predominantly because mainstream media is very anti-Donald Trump, very anti-Israel. And apparently from how it seems and the types of things that they're saying and writing about, they seem to be almost pro-Islamic Republic regime. Now, why this is, of course, there's a perfectly explainable explanatory reason for this, and it has largely to do with the fringe politics that I spoke about the last time. There are numerous fringe factions within any political society that gravitate towards the Palestinian plight, for example, and now the IRGC, Islamic Republic plight. And back in the 50s and 60s, those fringe elements in the political realm used to gravitate towards socialism and communism, sympathy with Cuba and Castro, sympathy with Mao's China and so forth, and even to some extent with Vietnam. Well, now that those ideologies have dissipated, we're seeing this gravitational pull around political ideologies is what they've really become. These Islamists who, like I said, hug and cradle these fringe elements in society and welcome their political views into their domain, only to take advantage of them, of course, because they have no necessity other than numbers is what they're really looking for, and sympathy. In numbers you have strength is the saying, isn't it? But there's these are things that we can talk about till we're blue in the face, and God knows some of us are. But there are other things to be wary of in what's happening in the news. Some of the Iranian commentators that analyze what's happening in the news, I full-heartedly comply with, and on the other hand, I don't comply with. I am of the mind that the Iranian people should be armed because I don't think this is a matter of strategy anymore. I think it's a moral imperative. Because whatever needs to be done on ground, at ground zero. And I don't think that the United States and the Israelis are in a position to march into any major city in Iran. I wish they could, quite frankly, because this will probably lead to some form of civil war. And in some respects, that may not be entirely a bad thing. When I say civil war, I don't mean from a separatist point of view where different factions will want to fight for their own territory. What I mean is that there is a dividing ideology within Iran right now. It is apparent to all of us on the outside and on the inside that the Islamic Republic and the IRGC, let's say, total around 1 million people. Now, this million people, this million stronghold, has to be confronted head on. I think air bombings can only do so much. But there needs to be a face-to-face confrontation with these people. Now, if the Israelis certainly can march into major cities in Iran and facilitate this, fabulous. If the Americans can do it, even better. But I think there needs to be some involvement and participation by the Iranians themselves, and it is not entirely a bad idea to arm this select group, if you like. And it doesn't have to be that select. We don't have to be that selective about it. Quite frankly, I think in a futuristic Iran, free Iran, and it has to be free in every sense, I think the Iranian people should be able to bear arms just like the Americans are able to. A few things to have a look at, which might be interesting.
The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms.
در مورد یک سری از موضوعات ما به تفاهم‌هایی رسیدیم واقعیت. اما در مورد دو سه موضوع مهم خب دیدگاه‌ها فاصله داشت و نهایتاً منجر به توافق نشد این گفتگوها.
Well, it's quite obvious from that interview. I don't know if anybody was thinking that there might be some kind of peace deal or some kind of negotiation. I think this was more theater. The theatrics of it was that J.D. Vance, the vice president, would be involved, who it's commonly known that he's not entirely in favor of war, but he thought that he might be able to, pull a hat trick of some sort and negotiate with these people, which of course is an impossibility. The Iranian regime is not interested in negotiation. They certainly are not interested in peace. They are not a government. They are not a peaceful government. They don't mean to have any peace. There's 47 years of evidence of this. The fact that they have created all of the proxies that they have, such as Hezbollah and Hamas and whatnot, is an indication that they are not seeking peaceful means and measures to negotiate or bring into negotiation of any sort. They are hell-bent on creating catastrophe and mayhem because that's how they benefit predominantly. There is one other thing that I wanted to address. This is an interview with a Colonel Wesley Martin. I think I've got his name right. What he says here is very interesting, and I want you to pay attention to it because I don't know who he is, and it doesn't really matter. But what's happening is that these things are being aired on social media platforms. They're being discussed. But the fact that they're being discussed is somewhat disturbing, but we don't really have to pay attention to these things because, people will say all kinds of things on podcasts, but it doesn't mean that it means anything. Everything that I say may mean nothing as well, but, I'm just expressing and I'm bringing to your attention that these conversations are going on in the English-speaking world. possibly in France as well, given that this particular interview is about the mention of the MEK. Let me take you to it and have a listen.
I know this is, I want to be mindful of the time, Colonel, and I know this is a fairly broad question, if it's even a question, but where do you think this is going in the short term being, let's say, the next couple of weeks?
Next couple of weeks, everybody's going to try to, from their position of strength, try to get something to say, I won. And that's going to be both sides. And the truth is, it's a stalemate. And it's going to stay a stalemate, except it's going to get worse in the near future unless President Trump and his administration starts working with the Iranian people. We don't need troops on the ground. They will be decimated by swarms of drones. And any relief trying to go in and get them will be decimated by swarms of drones. Work with the Iranian people. Get with the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Miriam Rajavi, the leader, has put out a 10-point plan. And she has stated, and one of the things is the end of Sharia law, which is the law based upon interpretation of the Quran, and go back to the rule of law. These are the Iranian people in 1953 had a good form of government, but because Mossadegh was going to nationalize oil, the British Petroleum got upset, and what he wanted to do is, instead of being paid pennies on the dollar, be paid reasonable price so he could run the country. So first the British went to Harry Truman. He threw him out of the office. No, we don't do this. Then they reinvented it for Dwight Eisenhower and said, Mossadegh is leaning towards Stalin. Oh, we have a crisis. Let's get rid of Mossadegh. Let's get the Shah's family back in power. So in 1953, they had a good government stripped from them. They tried in 1979, but Khomeini came in with his fundamentalist extremism, and they wiped out all opposition. And right now, the Iranian government, the IRGC, and the morality police are going around rounding up anybody they think may be a threat to the future of Iran and executing them. And I see the reports every day of the executions of the dissidents that's coming out of Iran.
Well, dear friends, for those of you who are not familiar with this situation, let me explain this to you very bluntly. The National Council of Resistance, which is the MEK, led by Maryam Rajavi now, because her husband, who was officially the leader of this group, vanished somehow. No body has ever been discovered, or nobody knows where he is. Anyway, that's besides the point. The MEK are a group of Islamic communists. In fact, that's what the late Shah used to call them as well. Their ideology is Islam, and I'm definitely not wrong about this. I'm absolutely correct, on the nose. Maryam Rajavi herself wears a hijab, and in fact, so do all the women who are a member of this group. They are an organization that have an axe to grind with the Islamic regime because they're not the ones in power. They were duped by the Islamic Republic in helping them during the revolution, which they did. And then they were sidelined and many of them were executed. Then they fled to Iraq and aided Saddam Hussein in the war and were responsible for the killings of many Iranians. Again, that's besides the point. As far as their political ambitions are concerned, well, they have a program which is based partly on Islam and partly on socialism. Now, Colonel Martin talking about Sharia law is not the main problem in Iran. We're not discussing Sharia law here. This isn't some village in Afghanistan that's exercising Sharia law against all the men and women. This is something far deeper. Iran is a country of 90 million people. Its fundamental problem isn't just Sharia law, it's the Islamic occupation of Iran. And what Maryam Rajavi wants to do is to come and reoccupy Iran with her mob, and it really is a mob. They're essentially just a bunch of has-beens and here today, gone tomorrow types of people. But the fact that people like Colonel Martin over here is even mentioning them is somewhat mind-boggling. I don't understand the point of this. They are in no way favored in Iran in any shape or form. The Iranian people don't want these people. Why would they kick out the Islamic Republic only to replace it with another fundamentally Islamic ideological political system that may have some elements of socialism and communism in it? The Iranians are not interested in communism. They're not interested in Islamic law and Islamic rule. So how is this an alternative exactly? And why is this even being entertained? I mean, this man is talking about in 1953, the Iranians had a proper government led by Mossadegh. This isn't true. Mossadegh was the prime minister. And prime ministers in constitutional monarchies are not elected, they're appointed. For those of you who are not familiar with constitutional monarchies and parliamentary system, and most of our American viewers would not be, in any constitutional monarchy, such as the UK, for example, and elsewhere, and at the time Iran, the prime minister is not elected by the people. The prime ministers are appointed by the king. It is the king's prerogative to appoint his first minister, which is what a prime minister is, a first minister. Parliament, at times, may recommend a prime minister to the king, but the final ratification is by the king, and the king can dismiss that prime minister if he wishes to. Now, Mossadegh broke the constitutional law of Iran when he dissolved parliament, which he is not supposed to. It is an illegal act. Only the crown can dissolve parliament and recall parliament. And this is the case in England as well. If any of you have ever lived in England, you will know that this is utterly true. So I don't know what he's talking about. And it was not Mossadegh who nationalized the oil. The nationalization of the oil was first mentioned by Reza Shah before his exile by the British, which was a coup d'etat because a foreign government had come in and invaded a sovereign country and exiled its king. So if there was a coup d'etat, it was by the British in 1941, I believe it was. So this fantasy that has been built by some Western commentators that Mossadegh was this elected entity and the CIA kicked him out through a coup, there was no coup. The Americans backed the rightful king, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi at the time, in order to reclaim the country and his position of power. Absolutely right. They upheld the Iranian constitution. I don't see what the problem is. But, we have people like this who have platforms or are given platforms to circulate gossip and rumors and untruths. And because, he has the title of colonel behind his name, people think he knows what he's talking about. He doesn't. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And, quite frankly, I want to say something which is fundamentally true, but not in all cases. It's rather the exception than the rule. And that's this. There are very few Western analysts who fully understand Iran. One of their fundamental mistakes is that they do what is known as a comparative analysis. So they're not particularly experts about a certain country, even though I really don't understand what an expert is. You can do something for a very long time, but it certainly doesn't make you an expert. It may make you informed, but you certainly are not an expert, because there are many things that one is not privy to that could alter one's opinion and one's point of view. So how anyone can be an expert about a country is rather mind-baffling, because a country is comprised of many components. There are cultural aspects, there are customs, There are languages, there are different groups, there are entities, there is history, historical aspects, geographical aspects, anthropological aspects, linguistic aspects. I mean, there's all of these things. So how you can be an expert about a country and have a master all of these different disciplines is, to say the least, impossible. And if not, then most certainly improbable. Many Western analysts claim this title, and it is erroneous. It is invalid and it is void. Many Iranians who attest to knowing their country are also in an erroneous position. There are many Iranians who don't understand Iran themselves. So how a Western analyst from 5,000-6,000 miles away who just about can read embassy reports and so on becomes an expert in a country is rather mind-numbing. Not to mention forming an opinion. I mean, Wesley Martin wasn't around at the time of Mossadegh, neither was I. But I've read the Iranian constitution, the imperial constitution of Persia at the time of Iran. He obviously hasn't. He's going by sound bites and what he's been fed, and he's just regurgitating. And you have to be very careful about what you hear on all kinds of platform and media and social media. I've said this before. I mean, let me show you this, which I thought was, which I thought was interesting. I mean, okay, let's have a look at this news item here. I mean, these are just a couple of things that I've picked out from social media. New York Times: Iran tries to grasp economic devastation of war and find a way past it. I mean, the mere suggestion of this title, it kind of suggests that the war is over and the Iranian Islamic Republic is looking to move past this stage now and rebuild, which isn't true. This is completely and utterly false. This second one: U.S. intelligence shows China taking a more active role in Iran war. China may have shipped missiles to Iran, and Beijing is allowing some companies to sell Tehran supplies that can be used in military production, American officials said. Well, we know this to be true. We have had sources from inside of Iran who have been quite close to this and have reported it as such. But even the wording of this is somewhat very carefully done, kind of almost staying aloof from the subject to be seen to be judicial. U.S. intelligence shows China taking a more active role in Iran war. Well, we've known this for a number of years now. The last one, which I thought was a funny one, The Hill, Bill Maher, who's a presenter here in the United States, I'm sure you all know, Trump pushed Iran ceasefire to save face as war crime concerns mount. What war crimes? What war crimes has Donald Trump committed? I am not aware of this. Donald Trump hasn't committed any war crimes. The United States certainly hasn't committed any war crimes in its war with Iran. If anything, Iran has committed war crimes to the tune of almost 50,000 people dead. Possibly even more, not to mention the mass executions, because we're not getting any reports at all. The internet is down in Iran, so we don't know if mass executions are going on and how many are being executed and so forth. So why is a comedian even voicing an opinion about this? You see, this is extremely dangerous, because when you create a rapport with a comedian who can make you laugh, you will listen to the other things he has to say as well, because those are instruments of manipulation. So when you find the first sentence to be funny and the second sentence to be even funnier, the third sentence, even if it's not funny, will sink in. So people like Bill Maher are dangerous to some extent, and of course, people like Bill Maher are for the masses. Let's face it. But we have to be careful of the masses. The masses need to be always guided, in my opinion. If you give them too much consideration for their opinion, you have the Islamic State arising. And that can happen in almost any country as well. As far as any further negotiations, I don't really see that happening, to be quite honest with you. Like I said before, you know, it's paramount for everybody to realize that this is not just about Iran. This is about China. This is about Russia. To some extent, this is about the Ukrainian war. It's about the future of currency as well. It's about trade routes, it's about oil, it's about energy, it's about a bunch of things. So it's not just about Iran, America wanting to topple the regime in Iran because Donald Trump wants to do a favor for the Iranians. That may be one of the results of this, but it certainly is not the paramount case for the United States. And the United States is not as focused on the nuclear material and the nuclear capability, certainly perhaps short term, but long term, there is much more at stake for the United States in Iran's role with China and so forth. China's situation economically and politically, as I explained in a previous podcast, maybe you've listened to it, is that, Iran is a scaffolding for what China is financially. Iran is able to export an ideology, a political sympathy. China can't do that. There is no one. We have nothing in common with Chinese customs or Chinese culture or in any shape or form. But we do with Iran, or even if we don't, we can find one with Iran, and the Islamic Republic is taking full advantage of that. They're using Islam as a, if you like, an electric blanket, so people can cuddle up to them, and they can fulfill their ideological potential and aims, which they've done to a very large extent in European countries and even here in the United States. When you have a mayor of New York who breaks bread at the end of Ramadan at the mayoral office, these are not encouraging signs. These are quite worrying, and they should be. I don't think any more negotiations will occur, and I don't see the point of it. I think these negotiations are, if anything, for domestic consumption and perhaps to appease some people who want to see the United States active more diplomatically. But the best defense is always offense. A good offense is the best defense. If you fall against the ropes for too long, your defeat is certain. The Islamic Republic's ambition is entirely that, is to throw everybody on the ropes and achieve what it is that they want to achieve, which isn't just supremacy not just supremacy in the area, but also a kind of global influence. The withdrawal of US bases from Western Asia and possibly from the entirety of Asia, this will obviously create a vacuum which economically and infrastructurally China will fill, and Iran will fill it ideologically with the help of Chinese money.